Teresa Wynn had been assigned to Judge Marsh's chambers for exactly 11 days, and she had not yet met the woman whose name was on the door. Judge Adrian Marsh was transferring from the Southern District, and her first morning at the Kellner Federal Building had been set for 8:00. Teresa arrived at 7:40 with a stack of briefing folders and a cup of coffee she did not have time to drink, and she was still sorting case numbers at the hallside table outside chambers when she heard the first exchange. She did not look up immediately. The judge's only corridor was always quiet at this hour, oak-paneled, pale with morning light, the kind of hush that courthouse buildings earn over decades. Voices were unusual. Two of them from the direction of the public corridor gate were more unusual still. She set down the folders. The woman standing at the gate wore a charcoal wool suit, a leather document case under one arm, and the specific composure of a person who had learned not to let the room see them counting. She was black, trim, her hair close-cropped and silver at the temples, and she was holding an opened credential wallet toward the man in the access booth the way you hold, something you have already shown once. I presented it 30 seconds ago, she said. Her voice was level, not raised. The identification reads United States District Judge Adrian D. Marsh, Kellner Federal Building. I'd like to pass to my chambers. The man in the booth was Vernon Deal. Teresa knew him by name and by the particular expression he wore now, not cruelty, exactly, but the easy authority of someone accustomed to small decisions going unquestioned. He was leaning on the half door, arms crossed, in no hurry. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you again to step back and wait with the other observers until court is in session. We get a lot of people come through here with IDs that what? She said. Deal paused. That could have been printed anywhere. She did not flinch. She did not raise her voice. She looked at him for one steady moment and then said, there is a verification procedure for judicial credentials at every federal courthouse in this circuit. Would you like to run it, or would you like to call your supervisor and have them run it? Deal reached out and pulled the half door a fraction of an inch closer to shut. I'll ask you to step back. Teresa had stopped breathing. She had her phone in her hand and no memory of picking it up. The woman at the gate did not step back. She lowered the credential wallet to her side with both hands flat against the leather, and she simply waited, not performing patience, not showing distress, just present, entirely composed. In a corridor she had every right to stand in. This was the most moment Teresa would think about later, turning it over the way you turn over, a question that keeps coming up with the same answer. The woman at the gate had not raised her voice, had not made a scene, had not done a single thing that gave Deal the friction he seemed to be waiting for. She had just stayed. Deal said, "Security will be along to assist you in just a few." "I don't need security to assist me," she said quietly. "I need you to do your job." Teresa was already moving down the hall. She didn't fully know why. She was a first-year law clerk. She had no standing in this. Deal outranked her in the building's daily mechanics. But she had clerked a summer for a circuit judge in Chicago, and she had a very strong sense of what she was looking at, and she knew that standing still was not a neutral act. She found Raymond Tate, the courtroom bailiff, in the break room off the east corridor, pouring coffee. Raymond was 22 years with the building and knew every face that came through the brass doors. "There's a woman at the judge's gate," Teresa said. "She says she's Judge Marsh. Deal won't verify her credentials." Raymond set his coffee down. He looked at Teresa's face for exactly 1 second. Then he walked. She followed him back up the main corridor, and when they came around the corner, the woman in the charcoal suit was still standing where she had been, in precisely the same posture, and Deal was still behind his half door. Nothing about the woman's expression suggested she had spent the last 2 minutes in anything other than calm certainty. Raymond Tate stopped. He looked at the woman. Something shifted in his face, not surprise, exactly, but the recalibration of a man who has just understood the full weight of a situation. "Judge Marsh," he said. She looked at him. "You're Bailiff Tate. We spoke by phone on Tuesday." "Yes, ma'am. He was already at the gate latch. I apologize for this. I'm so sorry." He pulled the half door open and stood aside. Deal had not moved. He was looking at Raymond with the expression of a man who is calculating something but is not sure what the answer is. "Friends interlog is right there," Raymond said to him quietly. He was not shouting. His voice had the particular flatness of a man who has chosen the measured word, because the other options are not appropriate. All it takes is one call to the clerk of court's office. One call. Takes 30 seconds. Deal said, I know what you were doing," Raymond said. He held the gate open. "Judge." She walked through without hurry, document case under her arm, chin level. She paused at the threshold and turned to look at Deal for just a moment. Not with anger. Not with satisfaction. only with the expression of a person noting a fact that will have consequences. Then she walked on. Teresa fell into step behind her, folders pressed to her chest, and she was aware that her own hands were shaking a little, which the judge's hands had not. Chief Judge Holman came out of his chambers 4 minutes later, alerted by Raymond's message. He was 63, silver-haired, and walked the corridor with the steady pace of a man who had spent decades in these halls. He knocked on the open door of the chambers at the end of the corridor, the one that now had a fresh nameplate beside it, plain brass, Adrian D. Marsh, USDJ. And when she looked up from the desk where she had already begun reading, he said, "I've just been told what happened at the gate this morning." "I'm sorry, Adrian. That is not how this building works." She set down the document she was reading. "I know it isn't," she said. "I'd like to address it formally. Not because I can't absorb an inconvenience." She paused. "But because the next person might not know the verification procedure exists, and that matters more than whether I was inconvenienced." Holman nodded once, slowly. "You'll have a meeting with HR and the chief of court operations this afternoon. I'll be there. And the access protocols will be reviewed before end of week." He held her gaze. "I mean that." "I know you do," she said, and she went back to reading. By 9:15, Vernon Deal had been removed from the judge's only gate and placed on administrative review pending the formal inquiry. By 3 o'clock, the clerk of court's office had distributed a building-wide reminder that judicial credentials must be verified. By the credential scan protocol, a system the building had possessed for years and which Deal had simply declined to use. The reminder included a one-page summary of the procedure and the name of a supervisor's direct line. The new access desk training requirement was added to the standard onboarding the following week. Teresa was in the courtroom when court opened. She was standing at the clerk's table, 2 steps below the bench, when Judge Marsh entered from the side door in her robe. The courtroom was full. Counsel at both tables, a gallery of observers, 2 other clerks, Raymond Tate at the door. Raymond called the court to order in the old way, the way courts have called for order across 100 years of this building's life. "All rise." They rose, every one of them, the attorneys in their expensive suits, the court reporter at her machine, the observers in the gallery, who had no idea what the woman in the robe had walked through to get here this morning. They rose and they stood in the particular quiet that courtrooms hold. Judge Adrian Marsh came to the bench. She set her notes down. She looked at the room she sat. "Good morning," she said. "Be seated." She said it the way a person speaks who has earned a room's attention and knows it, level, warm, and without the need to prove anything further. The thing she had come here to do was the work in front of her. The rest was the building's responsibility now, and the building was already doing it. Teresa settled into her chair and opened the first case file. Her hands had stopped shaking. She thought about the woman at the gate, the credential wallet held steady, the voice that had not risen, the refusal to move. She thought about what that composure cost. She thought about the fact that a woman who had every right to walk through that door had been made to stand and prove it, alone in a quiet corridor before anyone came. She thought that the building had done the right thing when the right thing was called for, and she thought that doing the right thing after the fact was not the same as having done no wrong. And she kept that thought, and she worked. Outside in the hall, the new nameplate on the door caught the morning light. Plain brass, 2 lines, a name, a title, and said without ceremony everything it needed to say.